The Alcott estate stood like a fortress of wealth, sprawling over manicured lawns and gleaming under the morning sun, but inside its walls the air felt oddly muted, as though sound itself didn't dare linger. Sophia, Richard Alcott's 8-year-old daughter, sat cross-legged on the plush carpet of her enormous playroom, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle before her. The room was filled with toys most children would dream of, yet the little girl's posture betrayed a loneliness money couldn't fix. Her head tilted slightly at the faint hum of the air conditioner, though her father never noticed such subtleties. To Richard, she was simply lost in her own silent world. He entered quietly, balancing a tray of food. "Here you go, sweetheart," he said softly, placing it on the low table near her. She didn't look up. He stood there for a long moment, his shoulders slumping as if he'd already braced himself for disappointment. "I wish things were different," he murmured, almost to himself, before his phone buzzed insistently. He pressed it to his ear, his voice brisk and businesslike as he strode out. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind him, leaving Sophia alone again with her puzzle pieces. From the hallway, Clara, the newly hired nanny, had watched every detail. In just a week on the job, she'd noticed things that unsettled her. She had worked with children with hearing impairments before, and something about Sophia didn't fit. The child's eyes were too alert, too responsive. When a vase had slipped from its perch the other day and shattered, Sophia had flinched violently, though Richard had written it off as coincidence. Clara wasn't convinced. Later that afternoon, Clara decided to test her growing suspicion. She sat beside Sophia in the playroom, pretending to tidy the art supplies while the girl quietly sorted puzzle pieces. Clara let a spoon slip from her lap so that it clattered against the hardwood floor behind her chair. Sophia's head whipped around instantly, her eyes locking on the sound. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She tried again, this time moving to the far side of the room, running her finger along the bookshelf until she snapped it softly. Sophia's gaze flicked toward her almost immediately. Clara crouched down, her voice low and gentle. "You can hear me, can't you?" Sophia froze. Her small fingers tightened around the puzzle piece in her hand, and her lips parted as if she wanted to respond, but then clamped shut again. The silence stretched heavy between them. Slowly, tears welled up in the child's eyes, her lashes trembling. Clara's heart broke at the sight. She reached out carefully, brushing Sophia's hand with hers, offering warmth and reassurance. "It's all right," she whispered. "You don't have to pretend with me. You're safe." Sophia's chin quivered, and for a brief second Clara thought she might finally speak. But just then, the sharp echo of footsteps filled the hall. Sophia's entire demeanor changed in an instant. She dropped her gaze to the puzzle, becoming once again the quiet, unreachable child everyone assumed her to be. Richard entered, loosening his tie with a weary motion. "How's she doing?" he asked, his eyes lingering on his daughter with a tenderness shadowed by frustration. Clara hesitated, biting back the urge to blurt out the truth. She could see how desperately he wanted to connect with Sophia, yet how quickly he accepted the silence as immovable. Sophia pressed the puzzle piece into its slot with unnecessary focus, refusing to look at him. Clara wanted to shout at Richard to notice, to see the way his daughter's shoulders tensed, the way her eyes darted toward every sound, betraying that she was far from deaf. Instead, she swallowed her words, realizing she needed more than suspicion before. She could confront him. Richard gave Clara a faint, tired smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for being patient with her," he said before checking his phone again. "I'll be in my study." And then he was gone, disappearing into the maze of corridors where his empire of emails and deals awaited. Clara sat in the silence left behind, her gaze fixed on the little girl still pretending to be absorbed in her puzzle. A heaviness settled over her as she realized the truth wasn't simply about hearing or not hearing. It was about fear. She could see it in Sophia's trembling hands, in the way her tears had come so suddenly, in the way she had shut down the moment her father's presence entered the room. The playroom, filled with bright toys and cheerful wallpaper, suddenly seemed like a gilded cage. Clara's breath caught in her throat as she pieced it together. Sophia wasn't deaf. She was pretending because someone had made her believe it was the only way to survive. The question that lingered like a storm cloud over Clara's heart was simple but terrifying: why? Clara didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in the small guest room the Alcotts had given her, staring at the ceiling while the storm of thoughts refused to quiet. The image of Sophia's trembling lips and tear-filled eyes replayed over and over. That little girl wasn't deaf, she was terrified. And terrified children don't invent fear out of nowhere, Someone had planted it deep inside her. Clara knew she had to find out who, and why. Over the next few days, she became even more attentive, watching carefully not just how Sophia behaved, but how she reacted to others. With Richard, Sophia seemed guarded but calm, like she could predict his movements. With the staff, she was shy but observant. But whenever Veronica entered the room, the change was stark. Sophia's shoulders stiffened, her body froze, and her eyes darted nervously toward the floor. Clara saw it time and again, and each time, her stomach knotted tighter. Veronica was beautiful in a polished, cold way, always dressed immaculately, with lips that curled just enough to suggest disdain. She rarely spoke to Sophia directly, and when she did, her words carried an edge sharp enough to cut. Clara noticed how Richard never seemed to pick up on it, blinded perhaps by love or the relief of having a partner after years of single fatherhood. He seemed grateful for Veronica's presence, convinced she helped him manage a difficult situation. Clara, however, saw something far darker. One evening, Richard had been called away on business, leaving the house unusually quiet. Clara stayed with Sophia in her bedroom, tucking her beneath the satin covers. The little girl clutched her stuffed rabbit tightly, her white eyes shimmering in the dim glow of the nightlight. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair, and lowered her voice to a soft murmur. "Sweetheart, I know you can hear me," she whispered. "I promise I won't tell anyone unless you want me to. You're safe with me." Sophia's eyes filled with tears almost instantly. She buried her face into the rabbit for a long moment before lifting it again, her lips trembling. "If Daddy knows," she whispered, her voice so small Clara almost didn't hear it, "she'll hurt me." Clara's chest tightened. She leaned closer, keeping her voice steady even though her hands shook. "Who will hurt you, Sophia?" The girl's eyes flicked to the door as though even the walls might be listening. Her tiny voice quivered. "Veronica. She told me if I ever talked in front of Daddy, she'd send me away to a place where kids never come home." The words chilled Clara to the bone. Rage and sorrow surged within her, but she kept her face calm for Sophia's sake. She smoothed the girl's hair back and kissed her forehead. "She can't hurt you, sweetheart. Not while I'm here, I promise." Sophia clung to her rabbit, nodding faintly, though Clara could see the fear still gripping her. When the girl finally drifted off to sleep, Clara sat in the chair by the window, staring out into the night. She couldn't believe Richard had ignored the signs for so long. But perhaps, ignored, wasn't fair. He saw what he wanted to see, and Veronica had been careful to make sure he saw nothing else. By morning, Clara had made her decision. She couldn't keep this secret buried, it would eat away at Sophia forever. She needed Richard to hear the truth, but she knew words alone might not be enough. He had to see it, to feel it for himself. At breakfast, she put her plan into motion. Richard sat at the long table, scrolling through his phone as the staff brought out platters of food. Veronica, impeccable in her silk robe, sipped her coffee while pretending to glance at Sophia with detached indifference. Clara placed a cup of tea in front of Richard, then turned to Sophia, who was fiddling nervously with her spoon. Clara touched her shoulder gently, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "Sweetheart," Clara said softly, "could you pass the sugar to your daddy?" Sophia froze, the fear flashing in her eyes. Veronica's hand tightened around her cup, though her expression remained smooth. Clara bent low and whispered just for Sophia, "It's okay. I'm right here." Taking a shaky breath, Sophia reached for the sugar bowl with trembling hands. And then, as if breaking through a dam, she spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "Here you go, Daddy." The room fell into stunned silence. Richard's cup clattered against the saucer as his eyes shot to his daughter. "Why, you can speak." His voice cracked with disbelief. Sophia's tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded. "I can hear you, Daddy. I always could." Richard's face went pale, his gaze darting from his daughter to Clara, searching for answers. Veronica's mask slipped for the briefest second, her eyes narrowing before she quickly looked away, her jaw tight. Clara met Richard's eyes and held them. She didn't need to say anything, the truth was finally there, undeniable. He had been blind, but now the veil had been lifted. Sophia sobbed quietly, clutching her rabbit, but for the first time her voice filled the grand dining hall. It was fragile, trembling, but powerful enough to shatter years of lies. Richard reached for her, gathering her into his arms, his own tears falling freely. In that moment, the silence that had defined their lives cracked wide open. Sophia had broken free of it, and nothing would ever be the same again.